winning a Stanley Cup with the LA Kings in 2012, winning the MLS Cup with the LA Galaxy. I can't believe I get to do this for my job and get to see these unbelievable moments happen on the ice. And to be, a bigger fish in a small pond rather than a smaller fish in a really big pond in LA felt like a really exciting opportunity. And that's the $600 million plus that gets put back into the economy through the events and games that we have here. Yeah, I don't think at the time I thought I would be there. And in fact, being anywhere for 12 years has been something in the sports industry that I think is pretty rare. Yeah, it's such a good question. So the pinch me moments just keep happening when you work in this industry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to season 4 of the Path to the Pros podcast. We've got our third guest of the season that I'm really excited to introduce. Today's guest has spent over 2 decades building a career across sports media and team leadership. Today, he's at the forefront of one of the NBA's most loyal and engaged fan bases, which we'll learn a lot more about. Talking about some of his key moments that have shaped his path, his career, his perspective on what it takes to be successful in this very competitive industry that we all love, and the importance of the community when you're building a successful sports business. Dewayne Hankins, President of Business Operations at the Portland Trail Blazers. Dewayne, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's crazy to hear you say 2 decades, but I guess that's the case, right?
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, right?
Exactly.
So, Dewayne, question I always kick these things off with. Would love to hear your journey, your story. You know, where did it all begin for you in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was minor league baseball. I came out of college first in my generation and in my family to go to college, so didn't really know what to do. Knew that I needed to get a degree, but really loved sports and music growing up. I can remember my dad taking me to my first White Sox game. I got to miss school. I got to go to opening day. It was just this incredible experience, and it was amazing. Yeah, I grew up in Chicago in the '90s, so in the Michael Jordan era of basketball, which was a pretty fun time to be watching basketball. So sports was just always such a key connection for me. And when I realized that even though I wasn't good enough to play in any sport, you could still work in the industry, that was pretty exciting. So started in minor league baseball, Kane County Cougars, as an internship, and that was it was really fun, really eye-opening. Minor league baseball, if you've worked in that industry, it's just so many different things that you're doing all the time. You have to, have a small staff, but you have just as many games as sort of anybody else, and you have to try to make it happen. And really opened my eyes to being a part of that industry, the hours, the excitement of anything can happen on any given night. So that's kind of how I got my start, and then moved on from there.
Love it. So many people that I speak to start their career in the minor league space. I guess it's a good way to learn the industry, put yourself in a position where you're having to juggle a variety of different responsibilities, which you touched on, and ultimately just give you a good lesson on what it takes to really kind of kickstart a career. Would you say that experience that you had there kind of shaped and really set you up to kind of go out and continue with the rest of the career that you've gone on to have?
Yeah, I do think so. I think, man, there's 2 things that really stand out about minor league sports. I think I said the first one, which is, you have this really small staff, and so you're doing all these different things. There were game days where, we were setting up for group picnic and literally flipping burgers and doing barbecues and running the scoreboard. I had to be the official scorer for one game. I mean, you just don't know what is going to happen on any given game day, but all of the things have to happen. And as I said, I think it really opens your eyes to the world of the sports industry, the hours for sure. I mean, if you really, you really love working in sports, I think if you can work in minor league baseball. And then the second part of it was, I mean, you have to try to sell as many tickets every single night, no matter what. And in minor league sports, you're going to get the prospect that's incredible that people are going to want to come see. But it's really not about the wins and the losses, and you have to learn how to create a great brand and a great product, without sort of the wins and losses taking a part of it. And I think anyone who can learn that skill coming up, how to fill a building, how to sell group tickets, how to just bring people to the ballpark or the stadium is a really, really important skill that I think a lot of folks can benefit from.
And you've since then, Miami Marlins, Minnesota Wild, the LA Kings, AG Sports. It's a great resume. Talk to me about one question I like to ask people is when was that kind of first pinch me moment? And it might have been when you was working at the minor league team. When was that first real pinch me moment when you thought, you know what, this is pretty nuts, and I'm doing something that I, grew up being a fan of and passionate about, and I'm now actually being paid to do this and in a situation where I'm really enjoying what I do.
Yeah, it's such a good question because the pinch me moments just keep happening when you work in this industry. Um, I can go back to my time with Minnesota Wild. There was a game in which we had Miriam Gabrick at the time, incredible winger with incredible speed, and he had a game. They had 5 goals. It was against the New York Rangers, and I just remember, had the hat trick, so everyone threw their hats on the ice. Had 2 more goals, and then he had a breakaway for a chance for a 6th goal. You think, is he going to get 2 hat tricks? He didn't end up making it, but that game was, I was that pinch me moment of, man, I can't believe I get to do this for my job and get to see these unbelievable moments happen on the ice. And then there have been several other ones since then, winning a Stanley Cup with the LA Kings in 2012, winning the MLS Cup with the LA Galaxy. Damian Lillard a couple of years ago had a 71-point game against the Rockets, which was just incredible. So, I mean, what I love about sports is we have a game almost every night and you never know what's going to happen. And that night could be the night that you see something incredible. So that's what makes this job so fun.
Yeah, love it. The pinch me moments never seem to stop, which is, another appealing part of this industry. So Dwayne, your background is very much marketing, digital media focused. So, a lot of people that I speak to come through that, ticketing, you eventually get into partnerships, then you get into leadership. How do you think having that background in marketing has kind of helped shape the executive that you are today, and I guess maybe the perspective that you have been in the position that you're in, when you compare yourself to maybe other execs across the industry that don't quite have the same background?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for me, marketing has always been, it has always been like a department that has never been able to have the same playbook twice. So you go from how we marketed, tickets and things in 2006 or 7 when I was at the Wild to the way that we market tickets now in 2025 with the Blazers. It is absolutely, completely, totally shifted because everyone's, viewing habits and other things has totally shifted. And I think that's been a huge part of it. I mean, you have to be able to be nimble. You have to be able to try something and see if it works and learn from it quickly and then pivot if it doesn't. Um, and in marketing, there's not the pressure of hitting a ticketing number, a revenue number, if you're a rep, or a sponsorship number, if you're selling, sponsorships for a team, but you feel the constant pressure to help the rest of those departments hit those numbers because I've always worked in organizations, whether it be AG, whether it be Minnesota, and whether it be here, where you felt the need to help those teams hit those goals, whether that's the single game ticket number, whether that's making sure that we had enough leads for them on the full season ticket side. So I think the constant need to adapt, to innovate has been something that has really helped. I go back to my time with the Wild, and I started off there as someone in the marketing group who was doing creative services. And this will show my age, but that was about the time Facebook and Twitter and other platforms were starting to take off. And I really felt passionate about pitching the idea that those platforms needed to be a place where we were going to be. And so I put together a proposal and a presentation and sat down with the team president at the time and said, here's how I think we should operate this. A lot of other teams are putting this in a public relations department. I think that these assets should be used as marketing tools. Let's talk about how we can make that happen. So, you have this entrepreneurial spirit, I think, in marketing where you have to adapt, you have to be nimble, and I think that served me well to get to where I am today.
Yeah, I love it. It is just a different perspective, but you make a good point on the constant evolution of marketing. And don't get me wrong, sales has
Mhm.
evolved, partnerships has evolved.
Sure.
All of these other divisions have gone through their own iterations of an evolution. But I think marketing has always been the one thing that Put very simply, the people that can market very well usually tend to do very well because it's how you present your brand, it's how you present your
Mm,
business, your fans in a lot of
mhm.
cases as well. So it's a very interesting point of view that you'd have sat in that seat. And so you joined the Trailblazers April 2013, joined as the VP of Marketing and Digital. Did you think at that time that you'd fast forward 8 or 9 years and you'd be the president of the business operations?
Absolutely not. No. I think I think I always every time I got a new opportunity, I always viewed it as a huge just a huge blessing, but sign of gratitude. I had mentors that really believed in me, starting with Chris McGowan, who was the president here at the Blazers before I took over. Worked with him at AEG. He left for we won a Stanley Cup in 2012 with the Kings in June, and then an MLS Cup in December, and then Chris left for Portland, and for a few months had talked to me about whether or not we'd want to come up to Portland. At the time, my wife and I had a 1-year old, and we felt like this could be a good time to move up to Portland. And in LA, I was overseeing digital, and Chris presented this opportunity for me to oversee all of marketing in Portland. And it seemed like this really exciting time to do that because Portland, I'd never been there, I'd never experienced any time there, but always knew how much the Blazers meant to the city, to the community, and to be a bigger fish in a small pond rather than a smaller fish in a really big pond in LA felt like a really exciting opportunity. So yeah, no, I definitely didn't think that. I mean, I think the whole time I have so much gratitude for Chris because I think that entire time he was preparing me for this role. There was a lot of things that he would hand me as challenges, departments, responsibilities, topics, issues, things that really helped me get ready for this role. So tons of gratitude towards him. But yeah, I don't think at the time I thought I would be there. And in fact, being anywhere for 12 years has been something in the sports industry that I think is pretty rare. But I've been really excited to be able to be here that long.
Yeah. And I mean the people around you, I guess that you've mentioned there, Chris, phenomenal guy, gone on to achieve great things as well, and someone to have as your mentor is a huge value proposition. Yeah. What if your next hire could shift your entire season? What if you never had to settle for second best ever again? In the world of sports and entertainment, pace is everything. You don't have to sift through weak resumes or wait months to fill senior roles. That's where your partnership with a global talent partner comes in. As a Financial Times fastest growing company 3 years running, when you partner with Forsyth Barnes, you'll tap into a global talent network built specifically for the fast-paced world of sports and entertainment. Having placed talent for some of the biggest leagues, venues, and brands in the industry, you can connect with world-class candidates fast and onboard the top talent that you need to succeed. 98% of roles filled. 92% of candidates staying in post over 2 years. Delivery guaranteed. Forsyth Barnes, your global talent partner, disrupting the recruitment industry. Book your free hiring consultation now at www.forsythbarnes.com and see just how your competitors are staying ahead. Talk to us a little then about how you've seen the evolution of the kind of community within Portland as it pertains to the Trailblazers, but you may want to extend that to sports in general. Because you've been there for, like you said, for 12 years now, right? I can imagine it would have been a very different situation, relationship, dynamic between the team and the city 12 years ago versus where it is today. Just talk to us a little about that kind of journey that you've seen as you've gone through your own evolution within the organization.
I think that's a really good question. I mean, it was, I joined the organization in Damian Lillard's rookie year, so we didn't make the playoffs that year, but we made the playoffs every year after that. And I will always remember, another pinch me moment, I guess, is in 2014 when we won in the first round against the Houston Rockets, and Damian hit this 3-pointer from the corner, buzzer beater to win the series, and there was this. That was an incredible moment in itself, just being in the arena. But I remember walking outside because we had set up this huge, sprawling sort of outdoor activation zone, and there was a stage, and all of the fans were just they were going crazy. I mean, it was the first time in almost, 15 years or something that the team had won a playoff round. And you just
That's nuts.
saw so much excitement in the city. And then even that weekend, I remember my son had a soccer game and there's people with Blazers gear on and there's things were just buzzing in the city. And that happened, we were so lucky to have that sort of stretch run the whole time that we were that I was at the head of marketing, and that led to things like yard signs or signs being put up all over the city, and really understanding and feeling like as 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 the Blazers go, the city goes. If the Blazers are doing well, the city's in a good mood. If the Blazers aren't doing well, then the city's not in a great mood. And right about the time I got this job is when things started to change on the performance side for the team. Um, you know, traded CJ McCollum first, then traded Damian and started our rebuild process. And it really hadn't been until this year that you started to see the tide really shift again. The second half of the year, we won 10 out of 11 games. That buzz came back in the arena. So you felt that excitement. And also during the time that I've been in this role, Portland's been through it reputationally. Just sort of in the news and other places. I think, it's had its challenges for sure. And I've had to play a different role being in this role than my old role. A lot of political relationships, whether that's with the mayor, the governor, and other folks. We had to do an extension to our lease. It was ending in 2025, and we got a deal done last summer with the right folks in the city. And we've had to spend a lot of time, I think, expressing to people, both in the community and politically, that the Blazers mean a lot to this city, and that we drive a lot of economic impact in this city. And without the Blazers, and I think people are seeing this more than ever with the team, being up for sale and the concern that the team could move, which, it's certainly a possibility, right? I mean, anything could happen, but I mean, what I love hearing about it from our fans is they realize, I think more than ever, how important it is to have the Blazers in Portland, and the groundswell of support that you see to keep the Blazers here is just something that's really exciting, not just from our fans, not just from our community, but from our political leaders.
Yeah, and you see that a lot across the world. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, right? Liverpool
Mhm.
is a football. You'll call it soccer, but I'll call it football. Is a
Yeah,
football city, right? Um, if Liverpool are doing well, the city is upbeat, the city is celebrating, and there's just a good vibe around the city. When we're not doing very well, there's not quite a fun vibe and there's not quite the same
hmm
energy and the feel around the city. Now, there is another team in Liverpool, which I won't kind of dive into too much detail on, but they'll certainly be enjoying it when we're not doing well. But point being, there are a handful of cities, probably more so now than at least when I was growing up, around the world where the sport kind of determines the mood of the city, and it pretty much sounds like that's the same in Portland, whether it be the Trailblazers or any other team, but certainly seems to be the case.
yeah, I love that example with Liverpool because it's just definitely the case, and there's a sense that fans feel an ownership of this team, unlike sort of any team I've ever worked for. And what I love about that is that there'll be no shortage of people telling you their opinions about how to do things, or if they like the decision that we've made or they don't like a decision that we've made. It was back in 2014 or 15, and another just interesting moment of, we had made the decision to do dynamic pricing, which is not all that controversial these days, but maybe back then it was. And so that was the front page of the newspaper story for the
Wow.
Oregonian, the Portland newspaper. So you realized, I realized then, I'm like, okay, any business decision that we make is going to get covered and going to be scrutinized, which again, I mean, worked in plenty of other markets where there's been sports teams and they have not had the same passionate, loyal fan base that Portland does. And so you certainly you take a lot of pride and excitement in being in a market where fans care as much as they do.
Yeah. How do you strike the balance between, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but I,
Oh,
I
go
want
for
to
it.
ask the questions. I think it's going to be valuable for people listening. Is how do you strike that balance between listening to what your fans want for the team and what is going to keep them entertained and keep them happy versus also trying to make sure that the business is headed in the right direction and you're doing all the right things from a business point of view, because a lot of fans will not forget, but it's so easy, and I do this myself all the time, to get so sucked up into I want my team to be the best. I want my team to do well. Why don't we just go and sign that player? Or why don't we just, trade this player and do this to improve? But it's not always just as simple as let's go and, do that because we just want to be better, right? There are various other things that have to be factored into it. So bring it back to the question, how do you strike that balance between listening enough to what the fans want and need, but also having to, be the president of the business and ensure that the business is, heading towards the direction that you're all aiming to get to?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think it's something that in a market like ours and other teams that might be in markets like ours where people care so much, this is incredibly important. Because the fans vote with their wallets. They come to our games or they don't. And if they don't like the direction things are headed, they don't come. And if they do, they will. So, I mean, ultimately, I have to give a ton of credit to our GM, Joe Cronin, who's done a tremendous job with this. But, on the business side and the basketball side, we have all of our own information. That could be proprietary information, that could be IP that basketball has about analytics, that could be information that we have on our background as well. And then we get information from fans, and we do a ton of surveys with our fans. We try to get a ton of feedback. We do focus groups. We try to understand everything, and that's another information input, another analysis that we'll look at. I think ultimately, when we have to make tough decisions, and Joe, again, I have to give him credit because he's had to make some tough ones on the basketball side over the last few years. It's just that you explain your answer, and you sit down and you talk to our fans, or you talk to season ticket holders or whomever, and you say, here's the information that we have, that we can share, and here's the decision that we had to make, and here's what we think this will result in. You can point to a press conference that Joe had this summer after we drafted Hansen Yang, a very up and coming prominent prospect in China. But many people felt it was an overreach for us to draft him. And I think even in his remarks to start the press conference, rather than saying, we know everything, you know nothing, we drafted this player, we think he's going to be great, he says, we realize this could be an unconventional choice, but we really believe in what he's done. We've traded back, we got another first round pick. We love taking this flyer on this guy, and we think he's going to be really exciting. And when you explain your decision, it takes the guard down, I think, for fans, in a big way. Like, I'll go back to the dynamic pricing, where that story that was on the front of the paper. Like, we had to explain to our fans, here's why we're doing this. We think that the Lakers game on a Friday is not the same value as this opponent on a Tuesday, but let's talk it through and try to understand it. So I think as long as you create an explanation for your fans, especially again in a market where people care so much, and they feel like they're included, at least in understanding your decision point and your process, that's usually been successful for us.
Yeah. I see this myself personally, being a fan and being on that side of the of the table, is communication when you do hear it and when you get it from a club. I genuinely think, even if it's not the news that I want to hear or
Yep.
what I'm looking for, but the fact that the club acknowledges and appreciates and respects the opinion and the value of the fan being aware of what's going on, again, within the within the parameters of which you can share, right? There are certain things that obviously you can't just go out with everything, otherwise it doesn't become a business, and it becomes something entirely different. But communication does really seem to be key across the board in any business, certainly in sports, but even more so in cities where there is such a passionate fan base that want to get behind the team. And look, let's be real here, right? Everyone wants the same thing. You want the team to be successful on and off the pitch or off the court, and you all want to be heading towards the same objectives and goals. It's just that people will have different opinions of how to get there, right? And I think that communication part is always important. You mentioned before, especially in the minor league space, about sports can be just seen as kind of wins and losses. What do you think, outside of wins and losses, a team should really mean to its city? Because I think there are a lot of cities across the world really that have just got established teams that have been there for so long, and that they're the team because they're the team that's there in the city. But I also feel like there are cities maybe similar to Portland where there is a connection. It's almost like the identity of the city is the team, and that sporting connection is really true and comes through in the community. So to bring it back to the question again, what do you think a team should really mean to its city outside of just, winning and losing and business, I guess, in general?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about being indispensable to the community organizationally and what that means. And it's a lot of things. It starts with it starts with relationships that our team has with what, like as I said earlier, political leaders. It's also, does our senior leadership team, sit on boards, whether that's nonprofit or otherwise, to help, have a voice in how business gets done around the city and influence and things like that. It's having really incredible relationships with the neighborhood that surrounds us. We partnered with a group called the Vine Vision Trust, who's working on rehabilitating a neighborhood near the arena. We see a huge benefit in working together with them as a sports and entertainment district that brings almost 2 million people downtown every year, and they want to build a thriving neighborhood that's bustling 365 days a year. So there's a ton of really great partnership that comes from that. It's the community work that we do. We hear all the time from our fans that they love being able to see our players in the community. They remember seeing, Terry Porter, Jerome Kersey at the local grocery store or the local, pharmacy, things like that. And so they just really want to see their players inside the community. And so our community efforts may look slightly different than other teams just because we really want to embrace and put ourselves in that community. Youth basketball is incredibly important to us. I think there is a gap where there may be some good rec leagues and there's some really competitive club and AAU sports, but there's a lot of people that just want to play basketball. And I think we can fill a void there, especially for young kids who just want to pick up a basketball and play. And maybe that's not going to be their career or their life or their dream, but they want to get into it. So we can find that. So I think it's all of those things, and it's the fact that I said earlier, where we're driving all these people downtown to Portland when people are maybe not coming downtown as much as they should have. So that's our 41 home games, and it's also the 80 plus concerts that we do a year. That's driving people downtown and building excitement and bringing folks here and having them spend their money in downtown Portland at restaurants and other things. So we try to be um, we just try to be a good neighbor, and we try to have our influence, and we try to make an impact.
All fantastic ideas and really important for any team in any city to be having that as a topic of discussion and spotlight. How do you even begin to measure whether that's actually making a difference or an impact in the city outside of just how many people are attending the game each time you guys have a home game?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to do that is through our economic impact studies, for at least that part of it, and that's the 600 million plus dollars that gets put back into the economy through the events and games that we have here. So that one is easy. The other ones I think are much more challenging. Um, the relationship piece, the understanding the local climate and the politics, like that just takes a lot of trust, a lot of conversations, a lot of relationship building. I don't know that we measure that other than by continuing to build those relationships. And then I think for like the community work and the efforts that we do, yeah, we have goals that are surrounding the amount of money that our foundation, Trailblazers Foundation, donates around the city. We have goals around how many basketballs we get in kids' hands and things like that. But it's really more just about making sure that we stay core to our value of being indispensable to the community.
Yeah, love it. Um, what advice would you have for someone in a similar situation, leading a team in another city, and for whatever reason they were just struggling to really kind of connect with the community? What advice would you give them on how they could navigate around that? What should they be doing? What maybe shouldn't they be doing?
I think a lot of listening. If there's a rehabilitation or relationship building that needs to happen, and the Blazers have had this. I mean, there was an era that the Blazers had before my time in the early 2000s when the players maybe were not um, doing the things that our fans wanted to do, and there was some rehabilitation that needed to happen. But it's a lot of listening. So I would recommend going and talking to um, commercial partners. How can this relationship be better? What can we do better? How do we learn from you? Going to political leaders and other government folks, talking to our fans. I remember we did a study 2013, 14. It was a brand study at the time, but my goal was to sit down with as many fans as possible, just to try to understand the market, try to understand where we were. The Blazers were, they were kind of middling at that time, and I didn't know. I hadn't worked in the NBA and I hadn't been to Portland, so I didn't want to assume anything and wanted to get as much data as possible. And a lot of the information we got from that study was really great. One of the great pieces of advice was, the Portland is this, eclectic, weird place, but you go inside the Moda Center or the building and it feels like it could be any building in any city. And we said, oh, well, there's something to learn from there. So we brought local restaurants inside the Portland arena, that you were able to go to. And and then we made the inside of the arena feel a little bit more Portland. So that was one of those takeaways. Another takeaway that we got was, you seem to care an awful lot about the city of Portland, but you're not caring about Oregon as much. And so we designed and created this Rip City Rally, where we went around the state and visited various cities and made a community day, and then had a fair that we do from, in the afternoon. And we still do that Rip City Rally to this day. And it has helped rehabilitate our image, I think, across the state of Oregon. So, I mean, just listening, you can learn so much from people who care so much about the brand and just want to see us improve. So.
Yeah. Last thing for you. You're not the only professional sports team in Portland anymore.
Mm-hmm.
How exciting is it to have the Fire in town? I'm sure they're going to play a huge part in continuing the great community work that you've already built there, and obviously, bringing back the WNBA team for the first time in 23 years, I think it is, maybe.
I think at least. And yeah, I do want to be kind to our friends at the Thorns and the Timbers across town as well. MLS has been, alive and well in an incredible market here in Portland for many, many years. And the Thorns are, continually outdrawing, most NWSL teams. So we have some great competition with those folks, and really great friends that work at those organizations. But the Fire, yeah, really excited to have basketball all year round at the Moda Center. I think that's the most exciting thing for us. Our seasons there'll be parts where they combine, and you'll be able to watch basketball all year round. And I think that's really exciting. And as we all know, I don't have to say it, the WNBA is having an incredible moment. And it's going to be really, really fun. And this market already loves and supports women's sports. And I think they'll do an incredible job showing up for the Fire.
Yeah, no doubt. You make a good point, by the way. Not only the professional sports team, but the other professional basketball team coming into town should have been the question there. So
yeah,
you're picking that one up. Good stuff. Well, look, Dewayne, this has been brilliant. I'm sure there's a lot of insight that a lot of folks across the industry can kind of pick up and learn from you. Congrats on all of your successes. Obviously, good luck with the upcoming season. I'm sure you guys are going to be shooting for the playoffs again, and hopefully you can make it through to the finals. So I'll certainly be cheering you guys on from a distance. But thanks so much for today. This has been fantastic.
Thanks so much for having me on. It was great to talk.
All right. Thanks, guys, for listening.